Hello and thank you for watching my videos. What you're looking at is a job we just completed. It's a Viessmann Vitodens 100 heating boiler used in conjunction with a Superstore indirect fired water heater. And these 4 pumps are a heating zone. And this one pump over here is for our domestic hot water. There's an additional pump down here, which is our primary pump, and that just pumps the boiler water into this black box here, which is what we call the low loss header. And that's pretty standard for a Viessmann installation. On the Viessmann 135, which is what this is, the sensor is not required for the low loss header. There's a temperature sensor that's optional. And there's no port on this boiler for the sensor, so it's not used. So coming over here, we have our backflow preventer, combination auto feeder, and I use the Khalifi. And over here we have the spiral vent air eliminator, and these are just prefabricated manifolds going off into our indirect fired water heater. And I have everything isolated, so each zone is isolated, and each circulator is isolatable, so that if there's a problem with the circulator, you don't have to drain the whole system. You can just shut the 2 valves off above and below the circulator and swap it out. And then we have 2 pump relays on this boiler. We have a 4-zone pump relay and a single zone. And the reason we have that is because on the Viessmann, they're kind of unique for their domestic hot water. If you're using an indirect fired, there's a separate set of contacts, which would be similar to like a TT, that they use exclusively for the hot water. So this is our for the domestic hot water, our single relay. And on our normally closed contactor, it gets interrupted, and that supplies power to the ZC terminal on this box. So in other words, it's used as a priority heating zone. So in other words, it gives priority to the domestic hot water by temporarily disabling the power to the 4 heating zones and giving priority to the domestic hot water. One of the reasons it does that is that it can distinguish between needing to use the outdoor reset schedule. This has an outdoor air sensor attached to it, which basically just gets run like a thermostat wire, and you mount the sensor outside. It's actually a thermistor that changes electrical resistance based on temperature. And that is not used when it's creating domestic hot water. So that's why there's 2 separate terminals. On the control board, this flips up and gives you the current stats of the boiler. You can see we're at almost 15 pounds and it's 98.7 degrees. I have it running right now because I'm just firing it up. Then we have our condensate pump. Any high efficiency heating system produces moisture, and that moisture goes into this pump and then subsequently gets pumped out into a drain. Some places want you to put a neutralizing sump in, and I don't agree with that, because I think it's no more harmful than you going in your kitchen and dumping vinegar down your drain. You can go in your kitchen and you can dump vinegar down your kitchen sink. You know, this is not as strong as vinegar. It's much weaker, so I just don't agree with it. So over here we have our temperature gauge. Here's an important note on the installation of the Viessmann vent. And I've seen and heard of a lot of guys that don't use the proper vent for Viessmann. The Viessmann vent protocol, there's several different ways of doing it, but this method is the only approved method is the System 636. See it right there. A lot of guys are using straight Schedule 80 CPVC, which does not meet the code for the Viessmann protocol. And also, this piping has stickers on it, and there's a sticker right there. It tells you that it's the System 636 approved. The intake piping can be regular Schedule 80, regular Schedule 40 PVC. And that's just regular PVC. Now these are used with sweeping 90s, long sweep 90s. The 636 does not make long pattern 90s, so I'm told. So they have different calculations for the fittings. So on this particular model, we had to limit the combined fittings and pipe run to 86 feet. It's either 86 or 88. And each one of these fittings counts as 8 feet, the gray ones. But the PVC vent counts as 5 feet because they're sweeping, so they have less friction. Here is our expansion tank. It's just number 30. This is a small house, so number 30 is fine for this application. Here is our vent terminal. This is our exhaust. So this is the System 636 exhaust, and that's vented out to code. Then over here we have our intake. So the exhaust needed to be 3 feet from that inside corner. However, the intake could be right up against it. Both of these, the intake and the exhaust, have bird screen underneath. I don't know if you can see it. They're in there. And that just stops birds. You can see it dripping a little bit because it's a condensing boiler right there. And also, one of our requirements in Massachusetts is to have our sign out. And there's my sign. The holes going through the penetration into the home are always sealed with caulking. Here's our gas connection and our tag from the local inspector. So I have a shutoff here that's required to shut off the unit. They actually give you a shutoff included in the unit on the gas, which is way up there. If you wanted to just shut the unit off, that comes in handy when you're doing your test, because a lot of times, if you're doing a 3-pound test, you can just pull off the drip leg, shut that off, shut the other gas cock off, and test from the drip leg instead of cutting in an additional test tee. And all boilers and water heaters, for safety reasons, need to have a pressure relief valve. So this is a 30-pound pressure relief valve on the heating system. On our domestic hot water, it's also required to have a TMP, that's temperature and pressure. So this goes off at 150 pounds, 210 degrees. This particular one is an 8-inch one, because if the standard temperature and pressure relief valve, the rod only is like 4 inches long. This is 8 inches long, so to make sure that it gets into the tank. That's very important on this type of installation. It's something that could be easily overlooked to just put the short TMP in there. And of course, a boiler drain. I've gone on several jobs, and the plumber actually forgets to put a drain on the water heater. There's no way to drain the water if you don't have a drain on it. Well, there is. You can siphon it out, but it's just easier to have a drain on the bottom. And that's pretty much it. We have a vacuum breaker on the water heater, which is code. And that condensate pump plugs in. Of course, we have a service switches to shut everything off, and isolation switches, so if you had to change a pump, you could shut it off independently. And that's it, and thank you for watching my videos.